From under the Golden Dome in Charleston, this is the West Virginia Capitol Report.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Capitol Report. I'm Bill Laird, along with co-host David Perry, and we're coming to you today from the offices of the State Board of Education here in Charleston, and pleased to welcome to our show the Superintendent of Schools for the state of West Virginia, Dr. Steve Paine. And again, as we all know, the West Virginia Legislature adjourned on March 7th with a little unfinished business remaining, and one of those specifically dealing with education reform in the state of West Virginia. And the next few minutes, we're going to have an opportunity to talk about education reform in the state of West Virginia with Dr. Steve Paine, State Superintendent of Schools. So, Dr. Paine, welcome to the Capitol Report.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
You bet. And again, the open agenda item of education reform in the state, very important to the future of the state of West Virginia. But you all basically have engaged a process that I understand is intended to draw focus and perhaps pull out some of those issues that are important to the citizens of West Virginia. If you could describe to us a little bit about what's going on in terms of these educational forums that are being conducted throughout the state of West Virginia.
Sure. We've done 5 of those forums up to this point. We have 3 to go. And the reason that we're doing these forums is that there was, as you know, a lot of discussion regarding the omnibus education bill during the regular session. There are some real good items in that bill that would be very meaningful for our districts. I can't really say they're educational reform items necessarily that have a causal effect on improving student achievement. We heard the President of the Senate and others many times talk about the low performance of our school system. I guess I could debate that with him and we could share facts, but that's not my intent. I don't think it's the ranking is not quite what he has suggested that it is. But I will say this, that there are some funding items in there that our State Board of Education had a finance committee that moved those items forward, and they're very consistent with what's in the bill. Will they directly raise student achievement, as has been pointed out by numerous people, not just the President, but and others, and he does that out of concern for the system, and I understand that. No, not necessarily. There's an indirect effect, but if you keep spending money the same way that you've always spent that money, you're not going to get a different result.
Right. And again, the term omnibus, that was attached to this bill very early on. And again, you know, certainly progression, incremental change, but you know, a very ambitious bill that was inclusive of so many elements, and sometimes, in my opinion, things can collapse under their own weight. From your perspective, you know, do you feel that this listening tour is intended to vet all aspects of comprehensive education, or define the scope of what it is we really need to try to do?
That's a perfect lead-in, because that's exactly what we're intending to do. As I mentioned, the omnibus bill had several items, and there are many, many good things in that particular bill. A couple items that were very controversial: educational savings accounts, charter schools. There's very little, if any, research around charter schools that render that a very conclusive strategy to move forward to raise student achievement. They work some places, they don't work some places. They're fraught with some corruption in some places, if you will, with regard to finances. And they're not, and they run very well in other places. Educational savings accounts, there's no research base around that, but the concept of giving parents the choice is what's driving that item. Again, as state superintendent with our state board, we're looking for those items that are going to raise the student achievement needle, that have a conclusive body of research around that. So we're going out to the people of West Virginia, every corner of the state, in a representative democracy, asking people, what do you think about educational reform? I mean, you're the people that our legislators serve. What are your ideas? Tell us about Senate Bill 451, the Omnibus Education Bill. Tell us what you like about it. Tell us what you don't like about it. And then also, we have some ideas that we have pulled from research, the top 5 educational research, ed reform ideas, if you will, that have a proven track record for raising student achievement. And please respond to those items that we put on the table as well. And then most importantly, folks, you have come to the table with some definite ideas yourselves. Share those with us, share those with others. Let's vet them, let's discuss them. And at the end of the day, we will compile a report for the governor, for the state board, for the president of the Senate, for the speaker of the House, and it will be the voice of the people of our state.
Dr. Paine, I share with you, of course, we talk about reform of education, and I think we should be using the term transform education. And I think we're at a crossroads, and the state has taken a hit on what's perceived as being 50th in everything. And I know that's not so. So perhaps you could share some of that information with us.
Well, that's true. And I think that stereotypically, if you will, in the past, the education system has received a quote-unquote bum rap, so to speak. If you look at state rankings and if you care about what they are in terms of NAEP scores, for example, in grade 4, we're 37th in math and reading. Is that satisfactory? No, absolutely not. But it's not 50th. In grade 8, it's 44th. So now we're moving closer to the bottom of the pack. When you look at graduation rates, we're 3rd in the country. And some people say, yes, but we have kids that aren't prepared to move to the next level. When we look at remediation rates of skills of students to go to college, in 2016, the rate was 31% of our kids needed some form of remediation. In 2017, that number decreased to 25%. So I don't think we can paint everything with a broad brush. We have some tremendous things going on in our public schools. Our career technical education programs are excelling right now. We're producing candidates for the workforce unlike we've ever produced for the economy in West Virginia and beyond. And so there are a lot of good things going on. And so I like your term, transformation versus reformation.
I noticed you said math scores, or you talked about math. And I know you being the dynamic leader you have been and are, you're talking about math for life. And one of the items in Senate Bill 451 was math incentives for teachers. So perhaps you could discuss that with us just a few minutes.
And I appreciate you bringing that point up. Mathematics student achievement in West Virginia has been very poor for the past 30 years. And you know, as you brought me back, and one of the priorities that we talked about was mathematics. And you know, we've rolled up our sleeves and we have put forth a comprehensive plan for the next 5 years to improve mathematics student achievement. You as an educator and others in your audience will know know very clearly that there must be a highly skilled, qualified workforce of teachers to be able to teach those students the right content. I heard a very troubling statistic yesterday that I'll check out, but I heard this from the chancellor of the 2-year college system who looked at data. In the past 5 years, we have decreased by 2,000 the number of teacher candidates in this state. 2,000. And you have to start asking questions why, and then start thinking about the actions that we all take, and I include myself in this, in the legislature, in the legislative session, and otherwise. Are we really attracting our best young people to the profession? I mean, we went through a grueling session this past year, and you know, education was not painted in a good light. And my question would be, how in the world do we expect to attract some of our best and brightest to the profession when we're beating ourselves up? That's ridiculous.
I noticed that 2 of the sessions it was talking about teacher prep programs, and talking about there may be some inadequacy or belief that the teacher prep programs need to be beefed up.
There is some of that thought that's out there, and so you know, we intend to work closely with our higher education institutions to make sure that we're doing the right things for those students that are in those preparation programs. So number one, we have 2,000 fewer than we did 5 years ago that are going into the profession. In mathematics, where you started, Mr. President, you mentioned that we have a shortage of math teachers. So in algebra in the state, we have 25% of our classrooms that are being taught by non-certified math teachers. They may be certified in a content area, but not mathematics. Same thing with geometry, 25% taught by non-certified teachers. So if we look at what that really means, those teachers are doing the best they can do. That's where we wanted to provide the incentive for those teachers in very quick and real time to obtain the background content as non-certified math teachers, help them to become certified, incentivize them with a stipend, a one-time stipend or whatever it might be, to get that certification for the benefit of all the kids that are out there. So, we think that kind of thing, in addition to the long-term preparation of teachers in our preparation programs, is really important.
Dr. Paine, my experience has been sometimes public policy issues can actually be extensions of maybe more fundamental, sort of philosophically based questions. And as it relates to innovation and change within our public school system, in some ways I think that may be related to questions about the centralization of authority in the state as opposed to 55 counties. I mean, obviously, in order to achieve educational parity, which I think we have a responsibility to ensure that a child in a rural area gets much of an educational opportunity as one who's may go to school within the shadow of the dome of the state capitol, I've said a time or two. But as far as the role of the state in prescribing a free and open educational system as opposed to that which is in the province of 55 counties. We elect county boards of education and charge them with certain responsibilities. Those are sort of grounded orientation questions, I think, as we get into more concrete public policy issues. If you wouldn't mind, just try to take a bite out of that. Where are we as far as allowing, innovative, high energy principle to transform a school? I think that's a good thing, but at the same time, we have to have a framework that ensures parity, and that sometimes gets a little bit out of sync, I'm sure.
Some folks ask me the difference between the first time that I was superintendent from 2005 through 2011 to where we are today. One of the biggest changes was led by Governor Justice. When he came in, he felt that there was too much control rested centralized here in Charleston, and for that reason, the state board, Board President Perry, other members of the board, I believe the legislature have tried to push that authority and control to the local level. I've said many, many times that increased flexibility that we've given to the districts also brings about robust accountability and responsibility. So we have pushed in a major way, and I could give you a list of very tangible ways that we've extended power, authority, whatever, if you will, with the local districts. They really need to step up, though, because what happens, and I've been in this business long enough, it's all cyclical. As soon as, if local districts, the 55 that are out there, boards of education, superintendents, principals, teachers, the whole educational community in those 55 districts, if they don't accept that responsibility, and if we don't see improvement in performance, we don't educate any children here in Building 6. And it's going to be up to them to show that they are good stewards of the authority and the responsibility and the flexibility that they've been given.
Stay tuned. The West Virginia Capitol Report will be right back. The West Virginia Capitol Report is brought to you by the AFL-CIO of West Virginia, Cucumber & Company, online at cucumberandcompany.com, and Mark Hunt & Associates, toll free at 800-554-1280. From under the Golden Dome in Charleston, this is the West Virginia Capitol Report.
And we do have, I guess, I'm familiar with the innovation zones. We act as if, innovation is a new concept. It's certainly been around a while, and, ways, I guess we had some tools in the toolbox before the whole debate of charter schools started, by which waivers of certain state board policies could be sought through local initiatives. I assume I'm correct in my remembering of that.
You're exactly right, and innovation zones are still something that can be permitted. The state had formally received a line item in the budget to receive applications from districts, and they could propose ideas, and then funding could be provided to those particular districts above and beyond what their normally levels of funding that they receive. A good example of where that worked was, I think, of Cabell County and Superintendent Bill Smith at the time, and they started a freshman academy. And it was a great concept to help freshmen transition to high school, not only in a social and emotional manner, but also academically. And they worked very well, and there were student achievement gains in those freshman academies. That's just one example of several concepts that were bred in those innovation zones. So we have heard in the forums, and it's probably premature for me to share all the results because I haven't seen the summation of the results, but as I've walked around tables, just like our legislators have and state board members and others, and just really proud of our legislators, I have to tell you, because they have truly, those that have come to the forums, they truly have taken the charge of the speaker and the president very seriously, that they are to get out and listen to their members. They're doing some of their own forums and meetings and so forth, which we applaud. That's their charge. But they've also taken the time to come to the ones that the state board and I are sponsoring throughout the state. And they're listening very carefully. And what I've heard is there is a need for innovation. There are folks that think that we have too much in terms of that West Virginia code book. Now, we didn't create the code over the years either. And so in my office, on my bookshelves, I have a Bible and I have a code book. And the code book exceeds anything that I've ever imagined. So maybe true educational reform can be accomplished by removing some of the provisions of code and not hamstringing through law. Right. And of course, you know, as a former lawmaker, Mr. Perry, that the state code leads to the development of state board policy. Sometimes we're directed, the state board shall promulgate a rule, and so forth. So, you know, it's
I know we have the listening tours, but beyond the listening tours, you through the department have done some other things to seek opinion. And those other things are such things as surveys. And you've surveyed what populations, Dr. Paine?
Yeah, so the final report that we give to the governor and to the president and the speaker will contain a result or a summary of all that's gone on in the forums, where we've directly responded to Senate Bill 451, some ideas we put out there in terms of true educational reform. Some of those ideas we put out there do not require code change, one of which would be we need great principals in every one of our schools. We don't do enough training with our districts of the principals. We could stand and it's really all about, in this case, we have a model we think works, but we can only train 100 out of 650 in a real, with fidelity. And then it's all about training teachers, but not just train them on general things. Like if it's a new teacher, how do we train that teacher to manage a classroom? You know, I think of Coach Neal, and I used to love to watch West Virginia football, and of course I love Bobby Pruitt too, but and other football teams in the state. But it wasn't complicated at the start. It was blocking and tackling, and it's about fundamental skills that our teachers need to, first of all, manage classrooms, and then from there, allow them to learn research-based strategies that are linked to raising student achievement. And then finally, we've asked them to bring their own ideas to the table. But the surveys, we've created one for, as Mr. Perry knows, he was responsible for this, teachers and counselors and principals. We want to know beyond the forums, for those that can't attend the forums, what are your thoughts and ideas regarding education reform? We've created one for students. We think student voice is critically important. I asked this morning how many responses we've received so far, and we've received in excess of 2,000 students' responses so far, and we appreciate that. We did a business survey. We've asked businesses around the state, and we received 200 responses What are the skills that you need in your employees, the ones that you hire that come directly from our schools or from our colleges? What skills do you require? And we'll pay attention to those as we deliver education and incorporate those into our standards and so forth, you know, at the appropriate time. And then we've also, I'm missing one of the surveys. Do you recall which one it is?
Students,
principals, teachers,
business, and parents.
And parents, excuse me, one of the most important. Parent community surveys. Tell us, for those of you that cannot attend the forums, what are your thoughts about education reform and about our performance as a statewide school system in general?
You know, the statistic you used earlier about the drop-off in the number of people choosing education as a profession, that's pretty sobering reality. And you know, the ability to attract good talent to the teaching profession, I think, is one of those bottom line considerations that certainly is important. But you know, I've always sort of thought that teachers need to also be subject matter experts. You know, I'd like to learn history from somebody who's a historian that has a true passion and interest. And I guess striking that balance with our educational institutions that offer teacher education, are they at liberty to design their own teacher education programs, or do we prescribe the curriculum and content and the training of teachers in the state of West Virginia? I've kind of always wondered that.
It's an interesting question, because there are those that feel that we should take more of a prescriptive role with our institutions of higher ed. I think President Paine had alluded to that. Perhaps, do we need to assume a stronger role? The state board actually approves the content of the programs in higher education with regard to teacher preparation. We're looking at policies that might give us maybe more scrutiny over the programs that are developed for teachers. Not that they're not doing a good job, but we have a totally different situation. I go back to the number of teachers. Wow. In the past 5 years, 2,000 less teacher candidates.
Wow.
In the past 5 years. Think about that. What in the world has happened in that past 5 years? I've been here 2 years. And I think we all have to ask ourselves honestly, what are we doing that's contributing to that reduction in the number of teachers? And then also, what can we do to improve the situation so that we can encourage more folks to go into the profession? And I really think that that starts with the overall tone that is set regarding our educational system in the state. And I do have to say this, I applaud the governor, because when he came in, he was a cheerleader for education. He has made education the cornerstone of his agenda. And you know, when he tries to recruit business to come to West Virginia, he doesn't need to come out and say we have a failed system. He needs to say we have a system that will accept the challenge of getting better. And I think those are two distinct different messages.
I know that we've got short time here, but I know the governor's wife as well has been much involved in education policy and procedure with her Communities in School project, which many people may not be familiar with.
She shared with us a great program for Greenbrier County and has a real passion to see that program grow, and we do too, because the students that were served in Greenbrier County had a 100% graduation rate. When you think about all that goes into a graduation of a child, of a student, it's good grades, good attendance, good behavior, civic responsibility, all of those things combined. So we are expanding to 3 pilot counties right now, and as a matter of fact, as soon as I'm done here, I'll be meeting with the First Lady and some other folks about how to expand the program further. The legislature very fortunately gave us an increase in funds that we can immediately expand to yet other counties in the state. We need to do so immediately, and especially to counteract some of the social ill wills out there, the opioids, the other situations that exist. We need to do better in terms of providing students the support, social emotional learning, so that they can achieve academically.
Well, unfortunately, our time has expired. I think we could sit here and talk on.
Absolutely.
But such an important issue to the future of the state of West Virginia, and Dr. Steve Paine, our State Superintendent of Schools, really want to thank you for taking time out to talk to Dave and I, and want to wish you every good luck and success as we seek to improve public education in the great state of West Virginia.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and take a break and be right back to close things out. So stay with us, everybody.
Stay tuned. The West Virginia Capitol Report will be right back. The West Virginia Capitol Report is brought to you by the AFL-CIO of West Virginia, Cucumber and Company, online at cucumberandcompany.com, and Mark Hunt and Associates, toll free at 800-554-1280. From under the Golden Dome in Charleston, this is the West Virginia Capitol Report.
Welcome back to the Capitol Report as we close out today's program, and I think we have to always keep our eyes trained on ways in which we can recruit the best and the brightest to dedicate their professional lives and careers to the teaching profession.
Yes, the numbers and the statistics were astounding, as I said, based on and the fact that we already have a shortage of 800 teachers across the state. So, as you said, it will reach crisis proportion.
You know, it's again, we better pay some attention to those kinds of issues. That's for sure. Well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of the Capitol Report. To the viewers, we'd like to thank you all for tuning us in each week. On behalf of my co-host Dave Perry, I'm Bill Laird. Again, thanks for tuning us in. Have a good week and goodbye, everybody.
This has been the West Virginia Capitol Report.